You have accidentally marched into the view from the crow's nest. I'm Robert Crowe, and whenever I get around to it, I investigate historic events. Our program today is Fort Sumter, How Not to Start a War. If the outbreak of the Civil War was not so tragic, the opening salvo at Fort Sumter might read like a slapstick comedy. The first cannon shot at the fort was an accident, and the Confederates apologized. Then, a Confederate messenger drank from a bottle he thought was whiskey, but it was actually iodine. Then the Confederates fired 3,000 artillery shells at the fort and didn't kill anyone. Then the only deaths in the Union Army were caused by Union soldiers, and it was after they had surrendered the fort. Well, here's how it all rolled out. South Carolina was the first state to secede from the United States on December 20th, 1860. Anticipating the worst, Union Major Robert Anderson, who was stationed in the harbor at Charleston, South Carolina, decided to move his Union garrison from Fort Moultrie over to Fort Sumter on December 26, 1860. Fort Sumter was empty, and it provided a superior position for his 85 troops. And he made the move without orders from anyone. The Union garrison was essentially left alone for 3 or 4 months, suffering only verbal threats. In March of 1861, an inexperienced Confederate gunner accidentally discharged his cannon. He said he didn't know it was loaded. The shot was fired from Morris Island, and the cannonball bounced off the wharf in front of Fort Sumter and rolled up against the wall of the fort. The Confederate gunners rode to the Union stronghold and apologized. A Confederate group under the command of Officer Richard Pryor went to the fort to demand surrender. While there, Pryor helped himself to a glass of what he thought was whiskey. The content of the bottle was actually iodine, and he had to have his stomach pumped by Union doctors. The Confederate troops were under the command of P.G.T. Beauregard, who was once a student at West Point, a student under, guess who? The Union commander. Major Anderson refused to surrender the fort, so at 4:30 a.m. on April 12th, the Southerners began shelling the fort. Because of a short supply of shells, the Union did not shoot back for many hours. Finally, under the command of U.S. Captain Abner Doubleday, no, he did not invent the game of baseball, the Northerners began to return fire. Confederate General Beauregard's 19 cannons fired an estimated 3,000 shots on Fort Sumter in 34 hours. None of the shots caused a death. Running low on ammunition and food and no chance of being resupplied, Major Anderson surrendered the fort. One of the conditions of the surrender was that the Union troops be allowed to fire a 100-gun salute to the Union flag, and for some reason, Beauregard agreed. On shot 47 by the Union gunners, an ammunition magazine caught fire, exploded, and 2 Union soldiers, Private Daniel Huff and Private Edward Galloway, died. They were the first casualties of the Civil War, and their deaths were caused by their own troops after the surrender of the fort. And after a ragged start, the war was on. Well, that's our program for today. Check back often and see if we ever try this again on another random topic. I'm Robert Crowe with The View from the Crow's Nest.